Hey, Kendall, let's look at your second assignment for this quarter. So, the first assignment was about reading, listening to speeches, kind of surface level analysis about their purpose and what's going on there. The next step in analyzing is to look at rhetorical appeals, which you may have done in middle school. Some people have, some people haven't. But this means that we are analyzing things for their ethos, pathos, or logos that are present. So, the notion of rhetorical appeals are centuries old, like Aristotle, Plato old. And the idea is that there are essentially three ways that you can appeal to someone or that they can appeal to you to achieve their rhetorical purpose. So let me go through each of these. And of course, you can look up any additional information on each of these as you're working through assignments. Ethos is the one that is most commonly confused. So normally we think of ethos or being ethical as being like a good, right, or moral person. And that's not really what this appeal is about. Ethos is really an appeal to credibility or trustworthiness. When someone references an expert, they're using an appeal to credibility or an ethos appeal. So if I were to say to you, my credibility is that I have been at Lake Travis High School for 11 years and I have a bachelor's degree in journalism and communications, and I'm certified to teach English for so many grade levels. I'm presenting to you the reasons in which I am a credible, trustworthy source to help you with English, because those are my credentials. And credentials and credibility are really closely tied. So anytime someone is referring to an expert, sometimes that looks like 7 out of 10 dentists would recommend Trident gum because they think, well, if a dentist would recommend this, then surely I can trust this product and buy it. A pathos appeal is an appeal to certain emotions. And I want you to know that it can be an appeal to any kind of emotion, not just happy, feel good stuff or stuff that you love. Sometimes people or advertisers or those that are writing or speaking rhetoric will appeal to your sense of humor or your sense of rage or frustration that want you to feel very fired up and impassioned about something. Sometimes people appeal to things like shame or guilt to get you to do something or think differently about yourself or rethink a situation. So just remember with appeals to emotion, and they're usually pretty clear, like it makes you feel aw or it makes you feel a certain and have an emotional reaction. But just be aware that sometimes it's an irrational emotion. There are people throughout history who have used appeals to emotions in kind of a predatory way. And we read Night last quarter from Elie Wiesel, and we know that Adolf Hitler was a very effective speaker and writer. His ability to put rhetoric into the world, he was really good at it, even though he was incredibly evil and dangerous. So he was appealing to people's irrational sense of emotions to get his purpose achieved. Now, let's thinking about logos or an appeal to logic. That is exactly how it sounds. Anytime you or someone appeals to you using facts, analogies, data, statistics, any kind of common knowledge, things that you could use deductive reasoning to easily understand, anything that feels super logical. This because this, that because that, any kind of logical exchange of information. So let's take you through this assignment, and I'm going to give you some instructions. I'm going to ask you to essentially do two things. One, to look at some advertisements, both print advertisements and a commercial, to see if you can identify what appeals are present. Then I'm going to give you a set or a series of scenarios in which you are going to create an appeal and an argument. So for the first image, take a look at the advertisement for Michelin tires and tell me which appeal you feel like this advertiser is trying to get you to use to buy their tires. And then I want you to explain that appeal in your own words. Kind of help me understand how you came to that conclusion. Same for this one. Look at this advertisement, see what's there, the kind of information that is present to you. Explain to me which appeal you think they are trying to use to get you to buy Sensodyne toothpaste, and then explain that appeal to me just a little bit. Same with the Bounty ad. What appeal do you think they're trying to use, and explain it to me to the best of your ability. Now, in this slide, there is a YouTube video here for a Brinks home security commercial. All three appeals are present in this commercial, and you can watch it 2-3 times, however many times you need. Your job is going to be to identify two appeals that are present and explain them to me. So whichever ones you happen to see. If you see an appeal to ethos or credibility, you can tell me about that. The appeals to emotion or the appeals to logic, whatever you see, tell me two appeals that you find when you watch this commercial and explain them to me. Okay, now we're going to start transitioning into scenarios. So for this particular slide, you can actually drop and drag the star, the heart, and the check mark to the appropriate scenario and argument. So the scenario is that you want to dye your hair. Your Parents don't want you to. And I've given you 3 different arguments that could be used to convince them to help you dye your hair. So simply drop and drag the appeal to credibility or trustworthiness to the right one, drop and drag the appeal to emotion, and then drop and drag the appeal to logic. So you should see those symbols in those checkboxes where they belong. Okay, scenario number 2 is that let's say you have a teacher who insists that homework is good and valuable and it gives you extra practice, and you want to convince them that homework is not valuable and that they should not assign it. So for this one, I'm going to let you pick any kind of appeal that you want and write me a little argument. You're probably going to need to give me 3 or 4 sentences for a complete argument, and just tell me which appeal that you're choosing to use, label it for me, and then write your argument. For scenario 3, this is one in which parents are not letting you go with a group of friends on spring break. So you're trying to convince them to let you go. So for this, again, pick any appeal that you want and see if you can craft an argument for me in about 3 or 4 sentences, and just label it and let me know which appeal you chose to use. Okay, for the next 2 slides, we are looking at media headlines, news headlines about the same event. So each headline has presented this information about the same event in a different way. So we're not arguing the validity or the goodness or badness of the headlines. What I do want you to do is see if you can look at the language that they used. And for the first slide, where it says, which headline talks about the incident in the mildest terms? So this is like the most neutral. Which one is using language that is not good or bad? They're just sort of right in the middle, which is the most neutral. And you can drop and drag that red circle and just put it over the headline that you feel like is the most neutral. So for this one, we're doing the same thing, but for the strongest language. So you're going to drop and drag that red circle over the headline that feels like it is the most condemnatory or strongest, or the most language that condemns the situation the most, whatever it is. So once you have done all of those things, I'll be able to see this slide, and that will complete your second assignment for this quarter.